Hey everyone, we are back with another tier list. Today I'm with my dad and we're going to be doing a tier list of all the Red Hot Chili Peppers studio albums. We have 11 albums to go through, 12 if you include I'm Beside You, which is the B-sides to I'm With You. And we're going to be counting that, right, Dad?
Yes, we are.
We're going to be counting that. Okay, so Daddy, do you want to give the fans an introduction to who the Red Hot Chili Peppers are?
Red Hot Chili Peppers are a band out of Southern California. They've been around since 1984, and they're actually the same age as I am, but I'm definitely much cooler than them.
True, definitely true. Okay, so their debut album is self-titled, isn't it?
It certainly is.
All
So,
right. So, what are your thoughts on their self-titled album?
well, you have to start somewhere, and this is where the Chili Peppers started. At this point, they didn't know exactly what it is they wanted to be, and on some songs came across like "True Men Don't Kill Coyotes," and on most of the other songs, it's like, what?
So, Dad, we have S, A, B, C, D, and E. What do you think is an appropriate tier ranking for this debut album?
Well, like I'll say, the Chili Peppers have really not had a bad album, but like I said, you got to start somewhere, and we will start this at the D level.
Okay, we're gonna start at the D level. Do you have a favorite song on this album?
True Men Don't Kill Coyotes.
I like that song too. Okay, and then it's just, I think it's 1 or 2 years later, we get their sophomore effort, Freaky Styley. I think this is an improvement on their first album. I think they still don't really know who they are yet, but they're refining some of their lineup and some of their sounds. And so I think this album is better than their debut, but still hasn't had their full potential. So what do you think of Freaky Styley, Dad?
I think it's much more listenable, it's much more danceable, but once again, they still haven't quite found themselves yet. But I will say it is an improvement, and I shall give it a C level.
A C level? Do you have a favorite song on this album?
Not really.
Okay. But overall, you think it's a more
Yeah,
listenable one.
yeah, I think it's a C level album. Yes.
All right. And then we get to their third album, buzzing through their discography here. They have a lot to go through. And this third album is called The Uplift Mofo Party. What a title. And this album, I think, is even better. I think they still keep improving upon what they are. And I really like the album cover on this one specifically. So, what are some songs you like on here, Dan?
Fight Like a Brave. It's definitely a good song. And it's probably the first song that I would consider a hit.
So, would you say that this album is an improvement from their first two?
I absolutely will say so.
But would you say it's still probably in the C tier?
Yeah, I would say it's waterized. I will give it a C level.
Okay, so those are their first three albums. Do you think it's better than Freaky Styley?
I think it's slightly better than Freaky Style.
Okay, so as of right now, they've gone up on their first three albums. So this is their fourth album, Mother's Milk. This is really the first album in their discography moving forward that I've listened to a ton. The other three, I really have just heard some of the singles and I've played through the album and I can't really get through the full album. But this is the first album I can actually get through the full thing. I think their cover of Stevie Wonder's Higher Ground is fantastic. I think Knock Me Down is also great. I think they're getting that Chili's vibe in there, and they have a lineup change because one of the guys had an overdose on the Uplift Mofo Party, so that's sad, but they're getting their sound more refined, and I think Mother's Milk is again another improvement. 4 albums in a row of a step up. What do you think, Dan?
I think you need to add Taste the Pain, which is as good as the two songs mentioned, and yes, it is. It's upward movement again.
So do you think we're still in the C tier range probably for the Chili's?
Nah, I'm going to give this one a B.
Okay, so we're giving it a B tier. Okay, and then we have 3 years later, we're out of the 80s now, and now we're in 1991. We have Blood Sugar Sex Magic. This was a huge album for the band, and it had some of their biggest songs to date. What are your thoughts on Blood Sugar, Dan?
Oh, I mean, when you start out with Give It Away, and then when you go to Under the Bridge, oh, I mean, this is a fantastic album. This is the album where the Chili Peppers really define the music that they're creating. Right.
And they're firing on all cylinders. You also have Suck My Kiss on here. And then you have Breaking the Girl, right? So a lot of big hits on this thing. And even the deep cuts are really good too. I think the album is a little bit long, But for the most part, again, this is the fifth album in a row that they've gone up. So I think this is the best album so far out of their first five. Do you think so, Dan?
I certainly do, and I will move it into the A category.
All right. So as you can see, they're kind of trending upward, which is great when you want to see a band. And then we get to a weird album. Three or 4 years later, we get to One Hot Minute. This has Dave Navarro on it. And Dan, what are your thoughts on One Hot Minute? This is kind of a weird album by them.
I would call it one hot beat. That's what I call it. I mean, after coming up and up and up, boom, back down again. But John Frusciante left the group, and what's the name of the guy that joined the band? Dave Navarro.
Dave Navarro, he's the Ink Master tattoo guy.
Yeah, well, we should stick to ink.
So,
because this wasn't it.
But this isn't a horrible album, right?
No, listen, it had some decent songs on there. I mean, it had Warped and My Friends and Aeroplane. Not bad songs.
Coffee House is on
Yeah.
there.
Not bad songs, but you know what? It really wasn't a Chili Pepper album. The problem is Dave Navarro is more rock than funk, and the Chili Peppers are funk. And this actually brings the album down. And unfortunately, I will have to move it back to that water level of a C.
So where do we think? Do we think it's better than Freaky Sally and Uplift Mofo? Is it the top of C?
No, yeah, I would consider it the top of the C, but it's still a C.
Okay. So then we have a 4-year gap. A lot of things happened in between this time period. If you ever read Anthony Kiedis, lead singer's book that he created called Scar Tissue, there's a lot of different things going on in this time period between One Hot Minute and Californication, a lot of drug abuse, a lot of lineup changes and relationship changes. So it's a very different time for the band. But then we get to 1999's Californication. This is going to be their third album of the 1990s. And this is going to round out that decade for them. So Californication, Dad, what are your thoughts on this album as a whole?
I got one word for it: masterpiece. I mean, from top to bottom, I mean, they have never been better. Every song is fantastic. Scar Tissue, Around the World, Other Side, Californication, Road Tripping, Parallel Universe. I mean, it's the whole album. It's just fantastic. It's top of the heap.
I think Get On Top is also a really good song here. And The Closer is a really good song too. But yeah, I agree. I think the album is a little top heavy because all the singles are like in a row, but some of the highlights on this album are the highest highlights you will get on any Chili Pepper album. And so I think it's iconic in that regard. The album cover is interesting because they changed what the pool and what the sky, those colors actually switch. Obviously the blue is supposed to be the pool and then that orange is supposed to be the sky. So it's a very interesting album cover and it's just an iconic album. Do you think it's deserving of an S tier?
It gets the S for me.
All right. So now we still got 5 albums to talk about. We're halfway through their discography. And then we get 3 years later to By the Way in 2002. This is their 7th album at the time, or is this their 8th? This is their 8th album. And this album is the first album of the 2000s for the band, a new era, the 21st century. What are your thoughts on By the Way?
By the Way, it's a good album. I mean, it's a letdown from Californication, but you know what? Everything would be. But I mean, with songs like By the Way, the Zephyr song, Can't Stop, I mean, it was just rolling along.
Universally Speaking is good, and then Dosed is good as well. The whole album is really good, and This Is a Call is probably my favorite deep cut from their entire discography, and this shows up on this album. So this is one of my favorite albums in their discography. This actually is my second favorite Chili Pepper album personally, and I think that this album is certainly deserving of a pretty high rating. So what do we think in terms of rating for By the Way, S, A, B, C, D?
Just like the Fonz would say, A.
So do we think it's better than Blood Sugar or no?
Yeah, it is better than Blood Sugar.
I agree. I think it is a better album than Blood Sugar as well. Okay, so we have 2 Stadium Arcadiums here. It's really just the A side and the first disc, which is like Jupiter and then Mars, or Mars and Jupiter, whatever it is. I think it's Jupiter and Mars. We'll just do this blue one because that's what the actual album cover is. But Stadium Arcadium, 4 years later, again, their gaps are getting longer and longer. And this album is almost 2 hours long. There's 28 songs, a ton of material. Every song they recorded, they pretty much put on this album. They didn't really have any B-sides from it, even though they actually do have some B-sides, which is crazy, but they recorded a lot. And John Frusciante is, at his peak here. He's doing a lot of great things on guitar. And I think this album is really good. There's a lot of music here, but I think a lot of it is quality. So what do you think of Stadium Arcadium, then?
Oh, I think it's way too long, way too many songs. The problem with the Chili Peppers is they don't throw away any idea. I mean, if you cut this down to a single album, you got a fantastic album. I mean, you got Danny California, you got Tell Me Baby, you get Snow, Hail, Desecration, Smile, Hump the Bump. Can't get better than that. But you know what? There was a whole bunch of junk on here. I mean, you could just chop off the back half of the album and then you would have yourself an S album. But unfortunately, they didn't do that.
I think some of the deep cuts on this is my personal favorite Chili Peppers album. So this personally is an S for me. This is my favorite album by them. But the other songs on here, like Death of a Martian, Wet Sand, the title track, all these songs are fantastic. And I think that this album is amazing. And it's a good introduction album to the Chili's. You've probably heard Danny California. Is that their biggest hit or second biggest hit, maybe?
Yeah, that's the second biggest hit.
And I think it's a great album overall. So Dad, what do you think? It's a little bit bloated, but where do we, as is in the whole picture, do you think this fits?
Well, you know what? Starting out with the word bloated starts with a B, so it gets a B for me.
Is it better than Mother's Milk?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we'll put Stadium Arcadium in the B column. Personally, I would have it in the S column. Okay, so then we have a massive gap, 5 years. Again, the longest gap at that time for Chili Peppers albums. And now we're into the 2010s. The 2000s were successful in them. They only had 2 albums, by the way, in Stadium Arcadium, but both great. And now we're on to I'm With You. So Dad, what happened? We had a lineup change in between Stadium Arcadium and I'm With You. What happened in between that time?
Well, Josh Klinghoffer, who actually was a touring member of the band, actually became the guitarist because John Frusciante decided to leave for the second time. But you know what? The one thing about the Chili Peppers is the guitar player is not the most important member of the band. It's actually the bassist and the singer. So whoever they put into that slot seems to work out pretty well because they just seem to have the songs.
Yeah, so I'm With You. The first single that was released was The Adventures of Rain Dance Maggie. I remember when this was released, it was such a weird title of a song. I was really confused at the beginning, but then I clicked play and everything made sense. This is, again, an album that I really, really like. And this is my 3rd favorite album from the band. And so this is like an A-tier record for me. I think this album, again, is front heavy, as a lot of the Chili Pepper albums are for some reason. But I think some of the deep cuts are great here too. I think Annie Wants a Baby is a great song. And then Police Station on the back half is good. And of course, The Adventures of Rain Dance Maggie as a lead single is great. So Dad, what are your thoughts on some of the other songs on this album?
Oh, I think Monarchy of Roses, Look Around, and Brendan's Death Song. I mean, this has it all. Yeah, definitely.
So what do you think in terms of a rating for I'm With You?
Oh, I'm definitely going to give this an A.
So where do we think in the context of A? By the way, and Blood Sugar are
I
already
think it's
there.
right in the middle there.
Right in the middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
right in the middle there.
So then 2 years later, they released something called I'm Beside You. Dad, what is I'm Beside You?
I'm Beside You is actually a culmination of all the leftovers. One thing about the Chili Peppers, when they put together an album, they don't just record 12 albums and boom, send them out. They record 50 songs and they'll release 12 of them. Some of them they'll use as B-sides and the others they just keep in the vault. And what happened was is on Record Store Day, 2013, they decided to release 12 songs, which were all outtakes from the I'm With You sessions. And you know what? Some of these songs were better than the songs that were on I'm With You. I mean, a song like Victorian Machinery was a great song.
Or Magpies on Fire.
Magpies on Fire, great song.
So this is a pretty good album. If you can call it an album, we're going to consider it, even though it's kind of a compilation, but really you can consider this its own album because I think it has the elements of a successful Red Hot Chili Peppers album. So where do we think in the tier list this I'm Beside You is going to fall?
I'm going to put it as B for the B-sides.
And where with Mother's Milk and Stadium
I will
Arcadium?
put it on the bottom of that list, another B.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty good placement for it. I do like later Chili Peppers, as obviously my dad does too, better than early Chili Peppers, but I think this album is still good and shows that they have a lot of potential, not only for songs on the album, but some of the outtakes are great too. So then again, we have a 5-year gap, which is again the longest at the time. And now we're almost in 2022, which is going to be 6 years since this was released. This was released in 2016. So we're coming up on maybe another Chili Peppers album, hopefully soon. So The Getaway, Dad, what do you think about The Getaway? This is the most recent album we have from them.
I think The Getaway is the most mature album of their career. I also think that it's the most consistent album from bottom to top. This is probably the only album that they have where I could actually listen to every song without wanting to skip over one.
That's a pretty big review. For me, Stadium Arcadium is that album. This isn't that album for me that I don't want to skip a single song, but I think there's a lot of great songs here and it shows the maturity. Songs like We Turn Red, and then immediately after that, you have something so different. I know Dark Necessities is track 2. That's right before We Turn Red. And then the opening is the title track. And then you have Go Robot. You have so many different songs on here. The Longest Wave is one of my favorite. You have so many different songs and styles on here. I think it really shows that the band are well-rounded. They're able to do a lot of different genres. And I do think this is a mature album from them too. I don't like it as much as I'm With You, but I do think this album comes very close. This is a B album for me. But Dad, what do you think about The Getaway?
Oh, I definitely disagree with that. I mean, songs like Goodbye Angel, Sick Love, this Ticonderoga, Detroit. I mean, this album is a banger. And I disagree with this guy over here.
So where should we put this album here?
This album is definitely in the S tier for me.
So is this the best or second
best?
best?
No. This has to go second best.
All right. So it looks like here, this is our Chili Pepper ranking. We have Californication topping with The Getaway second, By the Way third, I'm With You fourth, and then Blood Sugar rounding out with fifth, and then the rest here. But as you can see, there's no C is not a bad album. And we have a majority of their albums in B or higher. So starting the year 1991, other than One Hot Minute, we've had 6 or 7 albums. 6 out of the last 7 albums be a B or higher. So that's extremely impressive. So Dad, where do you want to see the Chili Peppers go from here? What's next?
What I'd like to see is an album consisting of more than one guitarist. I really am sad that they let Josh Klinghoffer go, because I really think that if they carried on as a 5-piece with a second guitarist, or maybe adding a keyboard, that it would make their sound a little bit fuller.
All right, so that's our list for now. Hopefully a new Chili Pepper album next year, and we can come back and see where this ranks. But the Chili Peppers have been on a streak, and they're one of our favorite bands. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you later.
Rock the house.